Let us continue now with a keynote speech by Ola Rosling, President and co-founder of Gapminder Foundation. Ola Rosling will provide us a view based on global public data on the global and regional development. I'm sure this will be an inspiring and interesting presentation. Professor Rosling, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Dr. Tedros, and dear Dr. Jakob, and the Ministers of Health, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, all of you. I am very glad that 150 of you have answered the questions that I sent out when I test your knowledge about European health. Because you're working with European health, you should know all the facts, right? I'm very happy that 150 answers. Next time I come around, I want 100% response rate, because I'm working with fixing the huge ignorance project in our society, not only out there. I keep this work alive after my father, who passed away 2 years ago. We have a non-profit foundation, and I'm going to explain a little bit about the strategy to create a real information society. Because today we live in a time when there is more data about more things than ever before. Unfortunately, we don't have the culture and the tools to actually make that data part of our decision making. So we need to invent it, because previous generations never had this much data. So there is nothing in the past we can copy. We have to invent new routines to use our data to make better decisions. Let me start by this slide. Please bring up my slideshow. This is a question that my father used to ask, and we have been asking audiences across the world, just to start to show you our methodology. How many of the world's 1-year-old children today have been vaccinated against some disease? Basic vaccination in some sort. Is it 80%, 50%, or 20%? And the question I sent to you also have ABC alternatives, right? The correct answer here is, let's look at the development of vaccination. When I was born, 1975, it was roughly 20%. Some of you were involved back then. Congratulations. What you thought would be impossible has actually happened, right? Today, the vaccination rate in the world is 88%. There is uncertainty in all data. You should never trust any data 100%. So that's why in the question we said 80% is the correct answer. We round downwards so no one can say we're exaggerating progress. Because when we test the audience, the public, in 14 rich countries, in online polls with somewhat representative samples, Sweden was the best. I'm from Sweden, just so you know. 21% picked the right answer. Is that good? Well, better than all the other countries. Look, a very small minority of the public know that vaccination has reached 80. Instead, they pick 50 or 20. They think a minority of kids are reached by the basic modern healthcare. They are absolutely wrong how fast the world has developed during the last 30, 40 years, right? If you go to a zoo and you ask chimpanzees, you give them 3 bananas with A, B, C, and you look at which one they pick. They don't read the question. Actually, 33% of them will pick the right banana. They score better than Sweden, right? We don't have a chance against the monkeys, right? So I'm going to use this comparison, 33% as a reference to random picking on ABC questions. How on earth can human beings in the highly educated countries be worse than monkeys on global development questions? Systematically, not only Japan, Germany, and France, all of the countries are pretty bad. Because they are all human beings, and we follow an intuitive way when we guess about the world and what information we get from the rest of the world. I went to the World Health Summit in Berlin, and I spoke in a big data session 2 hours after Angela Merkel. And here is the result from global public health experts on the question about vaccination. But I'm not surprised any longer when I see these kind of results, because it happens all over the place. This is one of the biggest banks in London. The bankers who's going to invest the billionaires' money where growth can happen next, they think a majority of children are outside modernization. They think 20%, look, 85% of them pick the very wrong answer, that only a fraction of humanity has modernized. They're going to miss where the investments should go, right? That's why this is devastating. My father tested this at the World Economic Forum in Davos. Here is the result. Have you been to Davos, anybody? Very fancy building, but the knowledge is not so fancy, actually. Look at this. Here's the Nobel laureates. Oh, okay, so this has nothing to do with intelligence. Don't take it personally if you answer wrongly, right? Has nothing. The IQ level in that room in Germany, Nobel laureates, 40 of them, in medicine actually, meet 400 medical students, researchers, handpicked from across the world, the talented elite. Look at the result. Oh. Their IQ didn't help them, because you don't know vaccination coverage unless you check the data. So they were guessing just like everyone else. Actually, they score worse than the public in most countries, right? Even they are Nobel laureates. So what is an expert, actually? We probably exaggerate it. I asked these questions. Now, to you, I asked 10 questions or 9 questions about European health. With the same idea, we actually tested 90 questions to the public in lots of countries, and I extracted the 10 where most people are wrong, so that you don't have to waste time on all those 90 things where you probably guess correctly. In this way, we can make it more effective to stay up to date with data, right? So here is one question. Do people know this? What happened to the number of measles cases in Europe? This is how we phrase the question to the public, because they don't know which countries are included in WHO region. But it's actually the WHO region, and we extended. We show that it's not only EU, right? That's for all the questions. What happened to measles cases since 2017? Do people know that it more than doubled? Well, here are the results from 3 countries. It's quite costly to do these surveys, so we couldn't afford more because we actually paid ourselves. It's not WHO who gave us this job. We just made it ourselves to see if we can use the global strategy for communicating on a European topic level, right? And you can see that most people actually know this. 70 or 69% in UK, France, and Germany, where we tested, actually picked the correct. They heard about the measles cases because it was in the news, right? Here is another question. How many children in Europe have been received with 2 doses of vaccination against measles? Correct answer, 90, okay? How many know this? You see, now it's less than the chimpanzee. Because these vaccinations that are happening in the silence never reach the news. There is no reason for journalists to write about the public health success that has been going on for 40 years. So the public don't know it. Instead, they got extremely scared when the measles cases comes out, because they actually believe that only 30% of kids are vaccinated in Europe. They are absolutely wrong about things in a pretty systematic way. The chimpanzees don't have that problem, right? And here are your results, 150 of you. Of course, you know this. I'm actually quite impressed, because remember at the Global Health Summit, there was very low correct answers. This is pretty good, 63%. Only roughly 40% of you didn't realize that most children in Europe today get the vaccination. Here are the trends. It's data from WHO. You can put out all your public data out on the website. It doesn't change people's perception unless it reaches their brains. And today we don't have a channel to people's brains with the new reliable data. That's what I said early on. This is a new moment in history. We got so much data that people have no consumption of. So this was the legacy of my father. When we started presenting and visualizing data to people, they say, wow, it's fantastic. But we realized they don't learn unless you make people aware that they are wrong to begin with. The illusion of knowledge is the biggest obstacle to learning. You think you already know things. That's why I test the knowledge. So we're running a small foundation. It was founded by my really smart wife, Anna, and me and my father. And my wife, Anna, has come up with a method to make the data easy to understand for everyone. Our mission statement is, we must fight devastating misconceptions with a fact-based worldview that everyone can understand, because we believe in democracy. It's not enough that all of you learn these facts. Actually, the public need to learn it. And today, we don't have a method of getting the data out there. But let's invent it. So today, right here, this second, I'm launching our first European health misconception study. Right? These are the 9 questions. We put up a PDF file on the internet, which you can download with all the results from all these questions. And we're going to try to invent in this space. Here is one of the questions. What is the life expectancy of a baby born today in Europe? Remember, we asked in France, Germany, and UK. So it's Western European countries. And they extrapolate. Look, the correct answer is 78, but many of them think it's more like in UK and France. Even if we said in the question that it's including Russia and Eastern Europe and many others, doesn't matter. They kind of use the knowledge they have and guess based on that. That's how the human brain works, right? In this, so we can say the misconception is lives in Eastern Europe are shorter than Western Europeans think. That's kind of the misconception we've figured. They don't realize they should have gone lower. 33% of monkeys would pick the right one, like in UK. In this room here today, you are actually better. Big applause. You're better than the monkeys on life expectancy. I mean, I have to comfort you because we're human beings. It's not easy to keep track of facts. It's not easy at all. Here is the data. Let me show you this tool, which shows all the countries of the world, like this. It's money on this axis and life expectancy on that axis. So GDP per capita versus life expectancy. All the countries in the world. And if we highlight, you can go to our website. We give away the tools for free to use in classrooms to start using data. Here are the countries of the WHO European region highlighted. And you can see that across the rest of the world, if I increase the others, the total world is the background there. Actually, European WHO ranges almost the complete world, right? It's not the rich elite up in a corner. No, it's actually a lot of variations. And there are not two kinds of countries in European region. Just like there is not two groups of countries in the world, right? So there is no way to say exactly where should the split go between the poor and the rich or the healthy or the sick. No, that's not how reality works. All the countries are progressing. Let's go back in time 200 years. I'm going to show you where, let me do it here. I'm going to show you where all the countries were 200 years ago. We can move backwards. It's 60,000 data points in front of your eyes. Don't try to memorize them, okay? This is where all the countries were 200 years ago. There was not a single country on this planet on the level where the poorest are today in terms of life expectancy. Everyone is healthier all across the world on average, right? So if we want to see where all the countries are, we have to zoom out and see European region highlighted here. I'm actually going to use this graph, sorry. So we're back in 1805, just to play forward what has happened. Be ready to clap your hands. These are all the European countries. It's a mess, I know. Just quickly, you can see it on our website. Move forward, hundreds of years of development. All the countries here are getting richer. We don't have good data, but roughly this is what happened. We're showing the territories as they show today on the world map, right? This is the First World War. That was the Spanish flu. Okay, back on track again. Between the wars, now we're coming to Second World War. Here you go, 1940, here, a lot of turbulence, and then back on track again. And the best thing I know is that since the Second World War, we haven't been fighting each other like that any longer. So look what happened when we keep peace. I really love the UN. Look at this. We're just getting richer and healthier all over the place. Isn't it great? On average. A few fell backwards there after the Soviet Union, but now they're starting to track up again in terms of income. But look how flat the curve has become. Producing health has become much cheaper, right? Even with lower GDP per capita, you're producing life expectancies in Tajikistan, which Sweden couldn't dream of only 40 years ago, right? It's on the same level, even with much more income. This is how complex the world is. You can't divide it into rich and poor or anything like that. Putting data in front of children in schools, they should learn that the reality is changing, right? So life expectancy in Europe is somewhere there in the middle, right? And that would have been the right answer. Here is another question. Almost 30% of all adults are smokers in Europe. But what's the number in the world? Is it higher, the same, or lower, right? And I've asked many of you already. The right answer is 20%. Yeah, really, you said. This is a perfect moment. He said, really. That's the moment when you can learn something new, is when you've been wrong about something. We should love being wrong instead of being embarrassed, right? Now, look at this. The Europeans were just like you. They say, really? No, they are worse than the monkeys. We Europeans don't know. We are the worst smokers on average, right? We are the worst smokers. And here is your result. Actually, there were 60%, oh, really? In the room. They didn't know this. Here's the data. It's WHO data, freely available on the website. We are up here, Europe, 29% on average. The other regions are far below, many of them, right? Smoking is expensive, of course. We're a bit richer, so that might be it. There are other reasons as well. But when these trends are changing, who is going to tell you when? That's the challenge. How many 15-year-old boys drink alcohol weekly in Europe? Weekly consumption of alcohol? 16%, 32, 48. I'm not talking about decimals. It's huge difference between A, B, C, right? Correct answer here is 16%. It's quite low. Most Europeans don't imagine that because they heard about young people getting drunk, and we think we are down on the level we were in 2002 or up on that level. Today, in this room, 44% of you picked the right answer. 60% of you didn't know that this has happened to young boys drinking alcohol, right? You're stuck up there in 2002 while the public health system is improving. Not even the people working in it keep track of it. And how are we then going to convey what works and what doesn't work? If we only talk about the problems, there will always be problems. But we need somehow to balance the successes, right? When we ask people, is the world getting better or worse? It's a stupid question. Of course, you can't answer such simple question. These are the answers. People answer with their guts, with their feelings. And in France, for example, 3% said, when YouGov, 3% say the world is getting better. Did you see all these bubbles? The world is getting better in many ways. The white space between shows those who couldn't decide if it's better or worse. I think that's the correct answer. Right? The world is not better or worse. It's a lot of different aspects going on at the same time. What has happened to the suicide rate in Europe in the past 20 years? Is it decreasing? Was it decreasing with 1/3? Did it stay the same or did it increase, right? A, B, C, very different answers. It decreased. There is something done right in Europe. Fewer people commit suicide. It's age adjusted. This should have been on the news, but it's a good story, so we don't hear about it. Here is what people heard. Very few, roughly 10% of Europeans, believe that suicide rate has been falling, right? The others see it just constant or increasing. And we're getting ever more depressed all the time, right? And nothing works. The people believe the psychiatric healthcare system doesn't work. Why? Because nobody told them the data. But the data is available. When fewer people commit suicide, nobody hear about it, right? In this room, 80% of you picked the wrong answer. So I'm doing something good here today. I'm actually telling you something you don't know. When you create communication campaigns, first check what people think before you start telling them the truth, right? They might already know the things and then you're wasting tax money. Instead, investigate knowledge and then you talk. So I know that this chart is news to you. I just wanted to show you difference across the member countries. There is, of course, enormous variations, right? But here is the average trend, and it is because fewer people decide to take their lives today in Europe. Isn't that really good? If you know someone who committed suicide, I think you really like this trend. And many people should feel comforted that something is done right in our societies, in many of them. It's not the same trend everywhere, of course not. But instead of this green trend downwards, people pick the red trends, and in their heads everything is getting worse. Because they watch the news. And only the few information pieces that make it to the news, right? From everything that happens in the world, what reaches your brain? We should be aware, all of us, that it's only the fraction that is dramatic. Something that has some kind of drama into it, right? Like you said with Ebola. If it can kill us, then I care about it. Otherwise, as soon as there is a treatment, then we don't care any longer. That's the risk, right? And then we are misinformed to think that the dramatic is more important than it is. So when we ask these questions, those 9 questions to those 3 European countries, 15% of the respondents managed the impossible for a chimpanzee to pick the wrong banana 9 times in a row. Imagine 0 correct answers. That's amazing. A chimpanzee cannot do that. Here are the other results. The most common result was they picked the right answer on 1 question. Of course, because we cherry-pick things. What I want to say with this is that misconceptions are systematic. So we can actually investigate it. Just like a disease, we can see where it appears. Whenever something is improving, just assume nobody knows it, right? So communicating around it, one got 7 right, nobody got 8 and 9. The average score for humans was 1.9, right? The chimpanzee would score 3. Out of 9, right? So the chimpanzee outbeat us on these questions. 10% were better than the chimpanzees. And now here are your results. At least the 150 of you who had nothing more important to do. Then I say, oh, of course, the important guys would have had even better results. Of course, I understand that. So that's comforting. Here are your results. Almost like the public. Not really exactly. Your average score was actually better than monkeys. That's really good, right? So we should tell the people of Europe that the WHO region Europe actually are better than monkeys. Don't think we're worse than the monkeys compared to the public, of course, right? 42% of you were better than monkeys. That's really, really good and comforting. There were actually some people, 3%, who scored 0. Amazing. What an opportunity to learn, right? Isn't it? It's tricky. You see the world like this. We all get an illusion of drama and terrible things, while many things are improving. Then it's difficult to keep track of the important stuff if we think everything is getting worse. The psychologists say we have a limited pool of worry. We can only be this much worried about things. And if you fill that with wrong information or small bad things, you can't keep track of the big important stuff. That is why it's important to convey when things are getting better. It's like a visual illusion we suffer from, all of us. If you think the right bubble there is larger than the left one, you're not ashamed, right? It's just fascinating that the human brain will see it's systematically wrong in all of us. Instead of being ashamed when we're wrong about the world, we should be curious, saying, how is our drama filter working? Why are we systematically wrong about the same things? Look at this illusion. No psychologist can actually explain how this works. It's a static image, but when you look around in it, it seems to be moving just because how the lines are. It's curiosity and humility I want to encourage in you. We are wrong systematically. Isn't that fascinating? Because it's systematic, then the solution can be systematic. We can have schools and we can have learning systems in place to make sure we're fixing the problem. If it was completely random misconceptions, then it's very hard to fix, right? How many suffer from depression in Europe? Is it 5%, 25, or 45? 45 is almost half the European population. Here are the results. Look at this. I don't know what they are thinking. Look. 30%, 38% in UK think that half of the population are depressed. Yeah, that's fun, actually. Let's laugh at it. It's amazing. Here are your results. Here are your results. You're on par with the monkeys almost there. Yeah. You want to be nice to depressed people, so you don't want to minimize it, right? You kind of add a little bit extra. But 45 is not a little bit extra. You're living in a continent where nobody's happy, roughly, or half of the people are sad. The development, this data is of course difficult, right? But the IHME had data, and roughly 5%, if you round it upwards a little bit. Of course, it's hard to capture all the depression. But it's not 25% at all, absolutely not. Ask this question to yourself. Are you happy? Yes or no? Can you measure happiness? There's a lot of debates around that, for good reasons. But you can ask the combination of these two questions, which Ipsos have done. Are you happy? And then we ask you, how many in your country do you think said yes as a percentage, right? Now we have 2 percentages, how much you believe are happy and how many say they are happy. And you've seen the question, so it's no vague definition of happiness. Here are the results from Sweden. We think 49% say they are happy, but indeed 95% say they are happy. We're wrong about half the population. We think they are unhappy. What does this mean in reality? Someone comes to you and say, I'm so sad. You don't take it seriously because you think, yeah, every second person is sad. I don't have time. No, it's only 5%. You should spend time with them. Take care of them, right? And we can treat the depressed. They are only 5%. If people believe it's 45, they're going to want to neglect them. They think they are too many. I think there are lots of consequences of this. But when we consume drama, like we consume sugar and fat, right? We become drama obese. And then we have to teach our kids in school, don't eat this, right? It's part of curriculum in most countries. Don't just eat more food, fat and sugar. How many children are obese? 10% correct, okay, in Europe. And people think it's 25 or 40. We tested this question even showing a picture of an obese person, like on the threshold, because nobody knows what obese is. Then the misconception increased. So I haven't done academic research on this. I'm actually not a professor and not a doctor. That was my father, right? I only do the polls and I give away the results. Someone has to do real investigations on this. We're trying to scale up the system. I'm planning to build an app that would ping in your pocket whenever new health data about your country or Europe is out and you're probably wrong, where we have already tested. So we're not going to give you the whole yearbook, only those 3 pieces that are actually surprising. And then you want to be knowledgeable about something, right? Then we need to scan the population to have a shorter learning curve to stay up to date with the changing world. That would be a solution. Here is your result. Again, I'm at WHO in Copenhagen and you score worse than monkeys on obesity, right? You should, I mean, if you are like a monkey, then you have no knowledge, right? You're just, I don't know, you're just guessing. But to be below the monkey requires misconceptions, right? Here is the obesity trend. Of course, it is increasing. And when a minority of a population is increasing, any kind, older people, migration, any minority that increases like this, it doubles like crazy in our heads. We add a 0 to it, say like, oh, half of the population are obese, right? So we kept showing these images and people ate too much hamburgers, right? We realized we had to teach the kids to avoid becoming obese. That was a public health campaign that started when I was a kid, roughly. Today, all children learn it. I think we need the same with drama, right? We need it to stop our evolutionary instincts to put in more fat and sugar in our bodies, right? We need the same with drama. Maybe like this, I don't know, tobacco did this. Tobacco industry finally realized we have to warn the consumer because it's too scary, right? The news often make things seem very alarming. Since a few years back, 65% of the package has to be covered also with the picture of a victim, right? This would look like censorship to most people. I don't think we can do this. But I think we need to inform the young and teach them how the brain works so they are better equipped. Like in Finland, I heard of a campaign where they are teaching, I see Finland over there, experimenting to teach children to lie with statistics. So they are equipped. So they can keep reading the news, but they can see through the methods used to exaggerate and make things look like drama. I think it's an excellent idea. Equipping them with knowledge of how dangerous it is to consume all this drama. That's what we did with the green food. Nobody walked up to McDonald's and they offered a green hamburger until someone asked for it. It's demand from the consumers will probably change the news industry. A journalist, we shouldn't blame them for creating the drama in our heads. What happened to the rate of newly diagnosed HIV infections in the last 10 years? Correct answer, as we heard half an hour before. This is a surprise to me, because HIV should be a threat, right? And it has increased. Yet here is the result. People didn't hear about it. So it kind of contradicts my hypothesis. This we should have heard about. This people should have known. But instead, you know, the general trend in Europe, they have been hearing about. So they haven't realized that there is a HIV increase, and then, of course, it's hard to get any attention to it, right? Here in this room today, it's the same problem. I was thinking, I knew what people knew when the previous speaker actually talked about this problem. I knew that 80% of you haven't heard about it before, but he didn't know that from UNAIDS. So we need to measure what we know to make sure we inform about the right things. Here are your answers in terms of HIV. Most of you thought, or half of you thought, that it's decreasing in this region. You're absolutely wrong about one of the things that was on the news every day when I was a kid, when the pandemic started, right? How is that possible? I'm sorry, but intellectually, curiosity, how is it possible that, because you're smart people, but you don't have a smart method of correcting your mistakes, and you're human beings. So we extrapolate from what we heard, and we guess, and we hope, and it's very stressful, because it's easy for someone to come up, an angry journalist telling you, asking you a nasty question, and you're saying the wrong thing, right? That's really stressful. That's why we call it factfulness, the book we wrote together with my late father. Like mindfulness, I want to be relaxed when I worked with data. I want to be correct about things, right? And I want to be honest and say, I don't know that, but I want to keep track of the big frameworks and the big trends and guess correctly. Today, we don't have such system, and that's why it's very stressful to deal with data. It's also very time-consuming. We need to fix this in some way. This is the HIV data from WHO for the different parts of the region. The green line is European region average, and then the east is at the top, and the west and center is actually also moving slightly upwards. Keeping this kind of data in the news, if you were a journalist, is impossible. They can never write this report. It's too boring, right? So we can't expect the journalists to fix this problem. They can never get our attention. This is what I learned from my father after these 20 years. He dropped out of Karolinska Institute to start teaching with public education about health. We first need to show people that they are wrong. Otherwise, they don't realize there is a need for learning, right? So that's why we keep asking these questions. I want to create a certificate in each little niche geography. Health in Europe, there should be a certificate, an advanced one, gold level, silver level, or something, which you, all of you, would be up to date with you. You would score 100% of it. That would make you feel confident whenever you talk to journalists that you are very well informed on your own topic of expertise. No one can expect you to know everything about agriculture, or forestry, or fishery. No, you don't claim that. But you should be correct about health, right? Then anyone out there in the public should at least know the basic things in this same test. So we're generating a huge amount of test questions now. We have 1,700 test questions for all the SDGs, for all the different regions, and we're giving them away for free because we're a non-profit. That's why I'm invited. I'm not a commercial company. Our business model is the worst business model on the planet. We don't charge for anything. It's just too exciting. So if we give away all these numbers, look at this and get inspired. We need it in Romania. We need it in Sweden. We're actually doing a Swedish test now. There's so much ignorance and it's so systematic. I think that's at least the first attempt to fix the information problem. And we've been testing Swedish teachers like this. Even the journalists in Sweden have gotten our certificate and they like it. They feel safe. And when I compare them with monkeys, actually, many people appreciate it. They like it. They see the joke in it. It's not diplomatically sensitive to be here at this fancy audience and compare them with monkeys. Thank you very much for inviting me.